Wow. What a day and what a moment. I could not think of a better way to end the year than by signing this bill. This is exactly the kind of legislation that we need to be passing. This bill takes head on one of the big challenges we face, curing what today are considered incurable diseases. I don't have to tell any of you that this moment was a very, very long time in coming. And we would not be here if it were not for the tireless, relentless work by so many people that are here standing today, like Fred Upton. And now we have a lot to show for it. I just want to say to all those legislators here, fantastic. You guys did such a good job. Look what we had to show for it. More money for medical research, a streamlined process for approving new drugs and devices. That means millions of patients will get the treatments that they need. I'm talking about people like our good friend here, Max Schill. Speeding up medical innovation could mean fewer surgeries and less hassle for Max. Oh, it could mean millions of Americans get to live longer, healthier lives. If that doesn't convince you that we need this bill, then I don't know what will. I'd also be remiss if I did not recognize the good work of Congressman Tim Murphy. Tim Murphy, just like everybody else on Cures, works so hard on getting mental health reform over the finish line, crisscrossing America, listening, doing hearings, talking to people about how to fix these issues. He's led the charge to bring attention and the resources to mental health issues. But all of you have worked very hard to put the patient back in charge. That's what this is all about. I'm so proud of all of the accomplishments of these members, and I simply want to say thank you and job well done. Thank you.
Well, the Speaker covered the significance of this, and there are a whole lot of people here who deserve recognition, but I'm going to single out one member of the Senate who did more than anything, I think, to acquaint us all with the significance of this. This is, I think, the most significant piece of legislation passed by this Congress. Will have the greatest impact on the future. And the fellow who educated us in the Senate Republican Conference about this was Senator Lamar Alexander. And I want to single him out for special recognition. Hey. I also want to thank the President and the Vice President. You know, this is a classic example of incredible bipartisan cooperation. The President had a particular interest in precision medicine, the Vice President obviously in the cancer moonshot. I had an interest in regenerative medicine. We all kind of pulled together here. When a bill like this passes with a very big margin, I think a lot of times people think, well, that was easy. Some of the toughest things, Leader Pelosi, I think, would agree, some of the toughest things to do around here actually, in the end, do end up passing by a very large majority, but it was really hard to put all the pieces together. So everybody behind us here played an important role in this, and I'm pleased to be here today. I think this is an exciting way to end this session. Thank you.
The 21st Century Cures Act represents a vital step forward, one that is very important to modernize and strengthen our nation's pursuit of life-saving treatments. The National Institutes of Health has the biblical power to cure. Where there is scientific opportunity, I think we have a moral responsibility to allocate resources. That's part of what this legislation does. We're providing reforms and resources that will accelerate innovative biomedical research, precision medicine, as has been mentioned, an interest of President Obama, brain research, very important. And I want to particularly salute Vice President Biden because he really advocated for not only his moonshot, cancer moonshot initiative, but for the entire bill, bringing clarity to its purpose and votes for its success. Frank Pallone, our ranking member on Energy and Commerce, and Diana DeGette have made this legislation their lives work for a very long time. Their knowledge, their persistence, their traveling the country, again, to have the best possible input, working in a bipartisan way, as the speaker and the leader mentioned, which was very, very important. And I'm very pleased that finally we have the $1 billion in opioid funding needed for the epidemic of addiction. We're also making improvements in mental health and substance disorder services. And that was a very bipartisan initiative as well. I'm also pleased to have a letter from the Speaker saying that, promising that Congress will meet its responsibility to robustly fund these commitments in the years ahead, not just in the 2017 appropriation. Accelerating, don't worry, okay?
Yes.
You heard it. Don't worry. I'm relieved. Accelerating development of cures and protecting the health and safety of the American people depends fully funding the FDA and the NIH. And may I say that when we make these investments and we come forward with cures or interventions, we want them to be available to all Americans. We will continue to try to work in a bipartisan way to champion the robust investment in innovation and R&D that powers new miracles, going back to that biblical power to cure. And I join the speaker in saying I can think of no better way than to start the holidays into signing this legislation, which makes America more healthy. Thank you. Yield to Mr. Upton.
Well, thank you. I'm Fred Upton. And this has been a great couple of years, because that's how long it has taken. We have worked not only both sides of the aisle, but both sides of the country, from north to south, from east to west. And we did something that Congress is often accused of not doing, and that is listening. We listened to every group that was out there, the researchers, the scientists, particularly the patient groups. Clock's ticking. Folks that have a disease know that it will take them without a cure. This bill is going to fix that problem because it expedites the approval of drugs and devices, and it is coupled with literally billions of dollars in more research that will find the answer for those cures years ahead of what it otherwise would have been. I want to thank my colleagues on our committee. You'll remember that this bill passed our committee 51-0. It was no easy task. Republicans and Democrats, but particularly I want to thank my partners, Frank Pallone and Diana DeGette. I thank the leadership on both sides of the aisle, particularly Lamar Alexander, who just did an outstanding job as we cobbled this thing together to get the 94 votes yesterday, the 392 votes the week before in the House. And just want to close just saying, you know what really made this important? It's personal. It's personal to everybody out there. Our colleagues, our staff, our constituents. It is going to find the answer. And it's important that we did it right. We also want to thank the administration, because without them, it would not be a reality when President Obama signs it into law next week. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred, and you and Representatives DeGette and Pallone have set a remarkably good example for the United States Senate, and we're grateful for that.
Say that again.
I'll say it again next Christmas when we do the same thing. Dr. Francis Collins, who is the remarkable leader of the National Institutes of Health, he calls it the National Institutes of Hope, predicted in a hearing before our committee that the following could happen in the next 10 years. Artificial pancreas for people with diabetes. Medicine that would identify Alzheimer's before the symptoms are apparent, and then once identified would help retard the progression of Alzheimer's. A vaccine for Zika, a vaccine for HIV/AIDS, a vaccine for universal flu, which killed 30,000 people last year. Heart transplant doctors, like former Majority Leader Bill Frist, will be out of business because instead we'll begin to use regenerative medicine to use your own cells to restore your own heart. This is Dr. Collins talking. And the real answer to the opioid addiction, which would be non-addictive pain medicines. He sees those coming in 10 years. These are truly medical miracles. This legislation helps make that dream come true in two ways. One, a surge of funding for the research. And second, to move all those cures and treatments more rapidly through the investment and regulatory process and into doctors' offices and into medicine cabinets so people can use them, hopefully, at a lower cost. That is why the President said this is an opportunity we can't miss. That's why the Vice President was making phone calls to Senator all week. That's why Speaker Ryan put this as part of his agenda for leadership. And that's why Mitch McConnell said this was the most significant piece of legislation for the year. I want to especially thank the Speaker, Ryan, and Senator McConnell, because they have so many, as Nancy knows, they have so many conflicting demands as leaders and as speakers. But they cleared a pathway for a very complex bill with many important differences of opinion. And without that, it simply would not be here today. Last year, we presented President Obama with what he called a Christmas miracle. After a long time, we helped affect the lives of 50 million children by fixing No Child Left Behind. This is a second Christmas miracle, a medical miracle that the President will be presented that affects even more people. It's the way Congress ought to work, and I'm privileged to have been a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to sound a little like Senator Alexander in what I say. First of all, I think this was a significant bill that became even more significant as the leadership of everyone here got more and more involved. I have to start out by saying that, first of all, Fred Upton and Diana DeGette from the very beginning, as Fred said, were determined to go around the country and listen and knew and want our country to continue to be innovative. The feeling that those two had was that there wasn't enough innovation, that there may be too many restrictions, or there wasn't enough money being spent at NIH on research for diseases that we hadn't found a cure, and that we could do more as a country to accomplish that. And so that was 21st Century Cures. But as time went on, we had these other bills that were just as important: mental health reform, dealing with opiates. Some of you know we passed an opiate package, and the President signed it back in July, but there wasn't the funding. And also the cancer moonshot, which was a really innovative idea on the part of President Obama and Vice President Biden. And so all this evolved into a package now that really is truly remarkable, that we're able to combine all these in one rubric, if you will, under the auspices of 21st Century Cures. And so I just want to thank the leadership, really. I have to thank Nancy Pelosi, our leadership on both the House and the Senate side, because there were many times when I met with Nancy, and there were the naysayers that said, we can't do all this, we can't put all this together, there's not enough time. And she said, there is enough time, we are going to do this. I hear the naysayers, but they're wrong. This overall is a really great bill, and it is. And so I want to thank everyone here for putting this together. I think it's remarkable that we are able to accomplish so much in this last few days of the session. And now I'd like to introduce Diana DeGette, because if there was anybody who absolutely refused to say no and said, we're doing this, it's going to get done every day, every hour in my year, it was my colleague, Congresswoman DeGette. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Frank. It was almost exactly 3 years ago today that Fred Upton came up to me on the floor, and he said, Diana, I'm thinking about doing a little bill to help kind of revise the way we do biomedical research so that we can get cures much more quickly from the research lab to the approval to the patient. And I'm wondering, would you want to help me with that? So I said, sure, Fred. And then I went back to my office and told my staff. So you can imagine 3 years later, as we stand here with all of our wonderful compadres on the Energy and Commerce Committee from both sides of the aisle, what a special moment this is for us. But it's not just special for all of us. It's really special for all of the patients of America, people for whom we need to have hope during this season. People like Max, people like my daughter Francesca, people like so many other Americans who have diseases for which we don't yet have a cure. And that's really when this Congress can come together in a bipartisan way to bring that hope to those Americans. Everybody has said what a team effort it was, and it was a team effort. Our friends in the Senate on both sides of the aisle, our leadership in the House, Speaker Ryan, Leader Pelosi. I wasn't the only one who refused to say no. There were those many late-night phone calls with Fred and his staff, and of course, everybody on this committee. I do think that there's one group, though, that deserves our thanks more than anybody else, and that's the incredible staffs that we have on all sides. So we give them a big round of applause. Just one thing in conclusion. Some commentators have said this is the way Congress used to work. And guess what? I hope this will be a new day opening the door in Congress working this way again to solve the very serious problems we have facing this country. I now want to introduce the star of our show, Max. So Max,
Super Max.
yeah. Max, by the way, he was with us every step of the way. He was.
Hi, my name is Max. Thank you for supporting Cures. Cures will help people feel better. Cures is more than hope. It's action. Thank you for working with each other on Cures. Cheers to Cures.
Now we're going to sign some bills here.